So when my friend Dan initially posted on social media and the forums that I was doing this project, I was quite surprised to hear about all the negative feedback he had gotten. Like, that will never work. Why would you use that engine? That will never fit. And that's a stupid swap. Thanks, Grom Bros. Despite all that, this is how the idea came about.
Dude, we should get Groms. Groms.
I don't know, I like the idea of them, but they're pretty slow.
You like mini bikes. You ride them all over in the middle of the night. These ones are street legal. You could ride them during the day.
Taking a different way home. Having too much fun. Having too much fun. Having too much fun. Dude, you're right. Let's get Groms. As far as motorcycles go, I thought the Grom was pretty ugly. Although they've grown on me, I really didn't like the styling, and I knew all of them would be a bore in the power department. Dan, however, was very quick to find and purchase a clean, good running Honda. But for me, the search began for something with a sleeker look, until I saw this. What looked like a miniature Ducati monster, nearly identical in every way but the size. The original idea was to put dirt tires on them and create tiny adventure bikes, but I thought to myself, well, this looks more like a street bike. Wouldn't it be great if it sounded like one too? So the research began for one of the smallest high revving engines I could find. And finally, after tons of research and a million different ideas, a 20-year-old first person video led me to one of these, an early model Ninja 250. You want to talk about a bold move? I actually found and purchased the Ninja before the clone. I hadn't seen either bike up close, but I was already committed to just making it work no matter what. It was a bit of a shame to disassemble such a beautiful low mile classic. This thing was clean, but I wanted to create something unique. After another month or so, I finally found a reasonably priced clone with a title and enjoyed it for a few rides before it got too cold. Once the weather started to warm up again, I was set on transforming this into what I had envisioned. I wanted to replicate every aspect of a sport bike, but smaller. And well, here it is, the final result, and I absolutely love the way it turned out. It is too much fun. Let's talk about some of the finer details and everything I did to make this dream work, starting up top with the gauges and some of the controls. Now, to make things easy, these controls, switches, gauges, the levers, everything except for the grips was transferred directly over from the Ninja onto this bike. I even found a great little spot for the ignition. And I knew from the beginning that I'd be keeping this analog gauge cluster from the Ninja because I just love seeing that needle climb. And of course, I had to add a dual USB charger with a voltage readout to keep my phone and camera charged on the go. And because this fuel tank was so large and it had a fuel level sensor in it, I added a universal fuel gauge with an adjustable resistor on it so I can dial in my exact fuel level. Here the foam mount leaves just enough space for my choke to work as perfectly as it should, and all the controls and switches work just as they would on a factory bike. Added some personal touches. I like babes roll the clip. Really though, I coordinated this keychain to pay homage to its origins. It's awesome. Now, the speedometer spins the opposite direction than most, so I'm currently modifying the wheel and the Ninja speedometer mechanism to work properly. Due to my last design spinning the cable in the wrong direction. Minor hiccup, easy fix. Guess I should triple check next time. But there's good news at the headlight. The location of where I had to mount it to cover the gauge cluster left just enough space between the front fork and the mounting point here for me to actually mount the coolant reservoir behind the headlight. In here you can actually catch a glimpse of the coolant reservoir. So for every setback, 5 things seem to work out perfectly. That's a great ratio, and everything seemed to find its place without a problem. On to the radiator. It's the smallest one I could find, and I like it, but my least favorite part is probably all the clamps that I had to use to make the hoses work. I figured in the future I would get some custom made hoses to match the port sizes I needed. Look, my primary focus was just to make it work. That was the theme of the whole project, make it work. And when I was facing doubt or roadblocks, I would tell myself in my grandfather's voice, make it work, gotta make it work. So eliminating doubt was a huge factor in the completion of this project. And if you do so, you can see how more things in your life will fall into place than get in your way. Speaking of falling into place, the radiator mounts were the exact same distance apart as my front engine mounts, so it was very easy to fabricate a mounting point for the radiator. I did the same thing down below, effectively creating a mounting bracket that's attached to my removable front engine mounts. With weld nuts on the back and 4 mounting points, all it needed was some bolts and this thing is solid. Look at this. The temperature sensor from the Ninja fits perfect with enough room for that bolt to come out. Not that I'd ever needed to, it's holding my engine up, come on. I added a discreet little logo, just my style. I spent a lot of time worrying about how and where all of this was going to fit, all for nothing, because as the project progressed, with the make it work attitude, everything seemed to go together as if it were supposed to. So if you're working on a project, no matter what it is, and it's not working out, keep pushing forward. Remember to tell yourself, you can make it work. You will make it work. I believe in you. So start there. I started at the frame. Here you can see some of my newer framework underneath the plastics. Alright. I knew the frame was going to need extensive modification to make room for the carburetors, and the main structural frame member that connected the front and rear end of the bike together was right where my carburetors needed to be. So I just did what had to be done. Do you know where I'm going with this? Long story short, I cut it in half. The frame, yeah, I cut the bike in half. You can see in some of these pictures how it just wouldn't fit. So after removing the original engine and all of the plastics, I knew that a lot of what you see to the left of the engine in this picture would have to be removed, greatly compromising the structural integrity of the bike. And so I started cutting. But before I did, I welded a rod from the front to the back of the bike right across the top to keep everything in place and ensure that the bike didn't fold in half on me. These tiny rods were used to retain the location of the mounting point for the bodywork, because everything that they were attached to was cut away. And in this video clip, you can actually see what I did to change the design of the frame from a single centered support brace to dual split support braces that go around the carburetor and connect to cross braces at the front and rear. And honestly, just getting to this point was a long process of installing the engine, taking measurements, leveling everything out, removing the engine, taking the necessary steps, making the modifications, and repeating the process until it was finally in there to stay. Now, I know my welds aren't that pretty, but I'm still learning, and it turned out nice. Honestly, I think if I left the lower fairings off, it would still look pretty wicked. But my intention from the start was to make the magic happen beneath the fairings so that I could return them to their original location. So I followed through with that idea so I can make the bike look stock again, except for the oversized engine. So this is where I ended up, and I'm glad I did it this way. It's discreet, subtle, it barely looks like I've done anything at all. There's also plenty of room for these carburetors now. Speaking of carburetors, this setup turned out amazing. Everything is much easier to service than it was on the Ninja. It fits beautifully, looks awesome, and once these air filters are out of the way, everything is removable through the sides or the top of the bike. Simple, beautiful, easy. Now, I knew these carburetors would need tuning, and I was all too familiar with the nightmares that people experience when making changes to the intake or the exhaust system on this engine. Proceeded forward, and I even wasted a bunch of time fabricating an airbox because I wanted to simulate the atmospheric conditions on the inside of the original airbox in an attempt to minimize any complications that would arise in regards to tuning. Which brings me to my next point. Don't spend too much time overthinking or over-researching a topic, because the moment you begin whatever it is you're doing, you already have more knowledge and experience than 80% of the people who have something to say about it. And as a bonus, you're making progress as you're learning. It's the best and fastest way to learn, because experience is the best teacher. So never let an overabundance of information, varying ideas, or different opinions slow you down or stop you from achieving your goals. Just keep moving forward, believe in yourself and your ideas, because you can do anything, especially if you want to. Now, for reasons I'll mention in the next video, I was not able to complete the tuning process before the end of the riding season, and because it became too cold in my area, I wasted another week of effort and stress searching for a motorcycle shop that still had a dyno so I could tune it in a temperature controlled environment. And surprisingly, the only ones I could find either only worked on one type of bike or were just not willing to help. Yeah, that's fine. It's cool. Who needs you? Whatever. So I was on my own, and I knew it was time to exercise that oh so special virtue called patience. A few months later, on the first warm day, it was finally time for fine-tuning, and I remember like it was yesterday. A friend joined me, and I had asked his thoughts on increasing the jet sizes by a lot and then dialing it back as needed. He shared that this wasn't a great idea and to just increase them one at a time as needed, the standard method. So what did I do? I increased it by 10. What? I increased it by 10. Yeah, it was a lot. But honestly, based on a few test rides, I could tell that it needed a lot more fuel. Now, unfortunately, for my friend, he had to taste the salty grits because 10 sizes was exactly what it needed. I got it perfect on the first try. Granted, I had a wealth of knowledge and extensive experience on the topic. I've been building and rebuilding carburetors since I was a child, and have even built modified carburetors for specific applications with much success. But there is still yet another valuable lesson here, and that is just to follow your heart. Have faith in yourself. Have confidence in your knowledge. Anyone can do this. You can do this. As long as your intentions are pure, follow your heart, and allow the universe to reward you. I was rewarded by my first test ride. It fired right up without choke, ran beautifully through the entire RPM range, and I didn't even need the airbox that I built. But I retract my previous statement. It wasn't a waste of time. I learned valuable skills that I'll show you later. Everything came together perfectly. Even the idle adjustment was in an incredibly convenient spot. Alright, enough about that. Let's move on to other things so we can wrap this up. The rear brake, for example, was a huge concern of mine. It was mounted on the back of the rear set and it extended straight forward toward the front of the bike, but now there's a giant engine in the way. So how will this fit? Doesn't matter, make it work. It was actually pretty simple, and by this point, I was so worried with how the cooling system was going to fit that I barely noticed I was easily cruising through what was previously a major concern. All I did was rotate it 180 degrees until it was pointed toward the back of the bike, and then bent it around the rear set to point forward again. All I had to do was flip the side that the foot pedal was on and make a few minor modifications. The amazing part about how this design worked out is that I didn't even have to move the rear brake light switch or the brake cylinder, and because it's on the same pivot point, it functions properly and looks awesome. Another little thing I did was raise the foot peg mounting position up higher, because after riding the Grom and the KP Mini, I realized how much less this bike allowed you to lean before the foot pegs would scrape the ground, which for me kind of defeated the purpose of having a tiny, nimble little bike. So I was happy to make that modification. Alright, onward. Let's talk about these pipes and what makes them sing so beautifully. This part was pretty cool. It was my first time building a custom exhaust, and am I glad that I saved the mufflers from the Ninja or what? Because I stumbled into a happy accident that turned out to simplify this whole process into a smooth finish. I originally intended to install a 2-into-1 exhaust system exiting on this side, I guess thinking it would have saved me some space and effort. I even bought a 2-into-1 exhaust from a later model Ninja that I considered modifying to make it work. This purchase wasn't in vain though, because that exhaust will come in handy later, not just for me, but for anyone supporting the channel as well. Hint, hint. Did you hear that? Pay attention. Remember that exhaust. Anyway, so just for laughs I installed the original exhaust, and it looked pretty goofy. Wait, then again, everything kind of fits perfectly, and this eliminates the need for excessive modification, and it would give the bike unique character. So just like that, it was decided that this bike would have dual exhaust, and I set off to find smaller, more suitable mufflers. I ordered a few different styles to see how they looked in person, but it seemed the one that I thought looked the best also fit the best, so it was meant to be. The only issues I could find were that the slip-on portion of the new muffler tips had a larger inlet than the manifold pipes, and the second was that the new muffler was hollow. It was pretty much a straight pipe, so I was sure it wasn't going to do much muffling. So the solution to issue 1 was why I was glad I saved the original mufflers. After a quick cut, the original joint slid perfectly into the slip-on, where it was then welded together. I also filled in these notches for added strength and a cleaner finish. Using this part of the original muffler created multiple benefits. Not only is it very strong, but it looks great. The extra inch it added allowed it to line up parallel with the bottom of the rear set at a perfect angle, which also provided a more accessible area for me to add a mounting point. The biggest benefit of all was that I could retain the factory connection, therefore also retaining the stock exhaust gaskets. This engine was in production for 20 years and was fairly common, so factory and aftermarket parts are cheap and available. I even bought extras, making future service and maintenance as easy and cool as a summer breeze. Now I know this looks different than before, which leads me to the solution to issue number 2, the lack of a sound dampening system. I knew that this bike would be too loud for my taste. Luckily I found what seemed to be a 2-stage silencer. Engines of all kinds make so many harsh, obnoxious noises without some type of muffler system. I personally think very few sound good without them. I do appreciate when engineering goes into how something sounds, so I wanted to make it quieter. However, the recommended installation method was just to slide it into place, but we can see why this wouldn't work. Yeah, nah. The solution was simple. Weld it in place, make it work. There, it's strong now. There's no chance of chattering, and can I just say, wow, this is the perfect example of how much keeping an open mind can help you. Keeping an open mind, and more importantly, an open heart, will allow you to see how much this world has to offer you, and most importantly, how much you have to offer the world. It's true, this gift came in the form of sound. This little thing is by no means quiet, but it's also not obnoxious. I think I landed exactly where I wanted it, and to be honest, it's way better than I ever expected. It's aggressive, dramatic, and it makes all the proper motorcycle noises I fantasized about. The original idea of having a high revving mini street bike all came together perfectly with how it sounds. to my ears. Anyway, there's not much left to it. All of the modifications to the frame, rear sets, and the new exhaust left no space for a kickstand, so it was relocated to a nice little spot on the swing arm. It's still very easy to reach, it works great, looks fine when it's up, and it rests right under the swing arm pointing slightly upward. The chain was a little more tricky and required some finesse, mostly because the center of the sprocket was positioned slightly below the center of the swing arm axle. Trying to line them up was a focal point when positioning the engine for placement, and I tried to raise it as high as possible. I even made a custom intake manifold to lower and level off the carburetors, which helped in raising the engine higher, all before I even welded the frame together. I was preemptive in my solutions, hoping to minimize issues and modification, but it still took work. They didn't line up perfectly, which meant the chain could potentially contact the swing arm. Not good. So changing the angle and height of the chain was the solution, and this was done by adding a roller sprocket to the swing arm, which fit right beneath the rear fender and chain guard as if it were meant to be. It's pretty cool. The chain travels along the same path as the guard. With a couple clever tricks, I converted the lower rear set bolt to a chain roller because that also interfered. And since everything works, it can now be upgraded to a sealed chain. Oh, and the front sprocket cover fits flush with the rear set. All that's really left is the shifter, and there's not much to say about that. A few modifications were made to the rear set to make it work. I also added a rear kick for more leverage, and because my foot can span across both foot pegs, giving access to the shifter there as well. Finally, I added an inline fuel filter and cutoff switch to keep everything clean, and the beautiful part is, it's accessible while I'm on the seat. And honestly, that covers most of the focal points of this build, as well as most other engine swaps on pretty much any other bike. So what are you waiting for? It's your turn to try. What's up guys, I'm in a great mood. I had the bike out, and it will do over 100 miles per hour. And I just gotta say, this is the perfect example of what can happen when you believe in yourself and embrace a positive mantra like make it work. Give that like button a smack if you like the video and you want to see more. If you want to grab one of these sick hoodies, head to nomorenonsense.org. I really wanted to give back in a big way on my first video, but Uncle Sam has to have his greedy little hands on everything. So I have a few legal things to iron out before I make that available to you. But if you grab a hoodie, you'll automatically be entered in this upcoming event, which I will announce later, as well as receive a discount on future purchases. But alright, I really want to talk business. The thing that made this project so awesome was the budget. I bought the Grom clone, which was an SSR Rascal 125, for $2,000. And believe it or not, I got the Ninja for only $1,000. That puts me at $3,000. Now, after the engine was removed from the Ninja, I then turned around and sold the Ninja for $350, which puts me at $2,650. I spent around $150 on exhaust, puts me at $2,800. Then I spent about $60 on sprockets. I spent another $30 on the headlight and $10 on the fuel gauge. So that puts me at about $2,900. Tax, title, and tag was a little bit over $200 at the time. And I spent around another $100 on miscellaneous items like welding wire and some nuts and bolts, as well as extra parts. So all in, I invested between $3,200 and $3,300. Between $3,200 and $3,300. So it really came in for less than the price of a stock Honda Grom or Kawasaki Z125 or any of the other name brand bikes of that size, and it's about 4 times as much motorcycle in a tiny package. It's just way better, and it is a true blast to ride. Look at this. Look at how beautiful it is out here. Let's just take a moment to marvel at the beauty of this beautiful planet and what she provides for us. Look at this. The sky is pink. It's beautiful. Really beautiful that we're blessed to live our lives here. Look at the color. It's beautiful. So beautiful. Look at this. I can't get over it. Wow. Wow. Anyway, I'll be honest with you. Throughout the project, there was times where I was filled with self-doubt. But I just really embraced that saying, make it work. When obstacles appear and the road seems blocked, remember that every challenge is an opportunity in disguise, an opportunity to learn. It's not about having the perfect plan or ideal conditions. It's about taking what you have and making it work. Embrace your creativity, resilience, and determination, and keep pushing forward. Oftentimes, when conditions aren't ideal and you're forced to really dive into your own creativity, it's when some of the most fascinating creations come into reality. So believe in your ability to find solutions and adapt. Embrace each setback as a stepping stone toward growth. Transform obstacles into opportunities and doubts into victories. Your journey ahead might be tough, but with a belief in yourself and a commitment to making it work, you have the power to turn dreams into a reality. So take that leap, trust your strength, and let your perseverance lead the way. Make sure you catch the next video. I'm going to show you what it's like to ride this thing first person, and I'm going to share some of the biggest challenges that I faced while building it. And I can guarantee you it's not going to be what you think. Much love, many blessings. See you soon.